Bottom of page 148, the last line where it says V'zeu she'amar hayunuka. So over the last three prakim, we defined what does it mean hashras hashchina. What does it mean that the Shekhinah is present in certain places, or when a person is engaged in certain activities. So we explained that even though las asar panim minei, Hashem is everywhere. That's number one. Number two, also there's small little powers and energies, like little rays of kedusha that enters every single creation to give it existence and to give it its life. But the Shekhinah is the nerve center. It's all the energy that enters this world, and it's a much higher level energy. It's a much more condensed energy, and that was present in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And even today, the Shekhinah is present every single time that a Yid sits down and learns Torah. So Shekhinah, Imay, the Shekhinah is with the person, because the entire Shekhinah is within the Torah. And with this, we are now going to go back and we're going to explain a passage which we learned already in Perek Lamed Hey. The beginning of Perek Lamed Hey, the Alter Rebbe quotes a Zohar. And in that Zohar, so the Zohar quotes a child, and the child said that there's a Mishnah that says that a person should not walk 4 amas, 4 cubits, with without a head covering. And the reason why is because the Shekhinah is on the head of every single person. Shekhinah shari al reshi. The Shekhinah is on the head of every person. So the yarmulke that we wear, the head covering that we wear, you hear, is out of respect for the Shekhinah that is on the head of every single Yid. And then the Zohar continues and says that you should know that the Shekhinah that's on your head, that candle which is on your head, which is the Shekhinah, it needs to have oil. And what is that oil? So that oil is uvdan tavan. Just like a candle needs to have oil. So the goof of the person, the Zohar says, the body of the person is the wick, the Shekhinah is the fire, and what is the oil? The oil is uvdan tavan. The oil is the good deeds, the mitzvahs that we do. And that's why Shlomo HaMelech says, "V'shemen al reishcha al yechsar." Should never be missing. Should never be deficient in the oil that's on your head, meaning that we always have to be doing mitzvahs, uvdan tavan, good actions, in order to maintain and keep the Shekhinah on our head. That's what we learned earlier on in Perek Lamed Hey. So the question that we have, which is what the last three, ostensibly what the last three Parakim and Tanya are coming to answer, is that in the Zohar it says that the Shem and the oil is uvdan tavan, is good deeds. The problem with that is that we know that throughout Kabbalah and throughout Chassidus, we know that Shemen is a reference to Chachma. Shemen mishchas kodesh. Shemen is connected to Kedusha, and Kedusha is always a reference to Chachma, to Hashem's Chachma. So why is it that the Zohar says that, why the Zohar calls the uvdan tavan the good deed Shemen, if we know that Shemen is usually called Chachma? Which one is it? Is it Chachma or is it good deeds? And we are going to answer that question soon. But before we answer that question, it's obvious that the reason why the Alter Rebbe added 3 Parakim and Tanya at the end, chapters 51 and 52 and 53, is not only because he's bothered by the fact that Shemen is called uvdan tavan. That's not the style of Tanya to ask a question on a detail and to spend any time, especially not 3 Parakim, to answer a detail. This could have been done elsewhere. The Alter Rebbe could have written somewhere out of Tanya, could have been in Kuntres Achron. There's obviously something very deep that these 3 Parakim are coming to add. In order to understand what exactly we added with these last 3 Parakim over what we learned so far in the body of Tanya, we need to do a little review.
What is called Zohama Tova?
Sorry?
What is Zohama Tova?
The Zohar says that the Shemen is uvdan tavan. Uvdan tavan. Look at page Mem Daled.
It's okay.
Yeah. That's an Aramaic. Uvdan is masim. Tavan is good. Here.
Over there, yeah. Uvdan,
Right here. Here are the words.
Yeah.
Uvdan tavan. So we need to do a little, we need to go back and see again, what does the Alter Rebbe say earlier on in Tanya, and then we'll be able to understand how right now we're going to, with the wrap-up of Tanya, how the Alter Rebbe is adding tremendous depth and some tremendous dimensions which were not discussed earlier on in Tanya. So let's go back and review a little. In Perek Lamed Hey, the Alter Rebbe asks a question. Based on what we just learned, based on the Zohar, we need to have mitzvahs, and not only mitzvahs, but we need to have action mitzvahs in order to maintain the Shekhinah, in order to keep our connection with the Shekhinah, with Hashem. Asks the Alter Rebbe why. Why? Why do we need physical mitzvahs in order to connect us to Hashem? Why can't we be connected to Hashem by virtue of the fact that we have a neshama, and we have avas Hashem, and we have yiras Hashem? Why do we need to have mitzvahs in order to connect us to Hashem? So the Rebbe explains that your neshama, as holy as your neshama might be, and as much ava and yira, as much love and fear that your neshama might have for Hashem, your problem with your neshama is that it's an identity, it's a mitzias, it's something. You want to have proof that it's something? You want to know, how do we establish that your neshama is a mitzias? Well, you just said your neshama loves Hashem, and your neshama fears Hashem. When you say that the neshama loves Hashem, what is the implication? In the words of the Alter Rebbe, Yesh Misha Oihev. There is something that loves Hashem. If the neshama was completely without an identity, it was completely batal to Hashem, it would not be capable of loving Hashem, because loving implies that there are two entities. There's the one that loves, and there's the one that is loved, and the same thing is with fear. So you have fear of Hashem. That's not bittul. That's not the ultimate level of bittul, because the fact that there's a you who fears Hashem, so automatically you are stuck. Your neshama is stuck in its yeshus, in its identity. It is a holy identity, a wonderful, beautiful identity which is defined by holy spiritual aspirations and a desire to connect to Hashem, but ultimately it is something. And because it is something, it is not a keli for the Shekhinah. Because as we learned earlier on in Tanya, already in Perek Dalet in Tanya, the keli, how are we a receptacle for Kedusha? How do we connect to Hashem? Is only through absolute bittul. Bittul means it's not about you at all. Where do we have absolute bittul? Absolute bittul is in Torah and mitzvahs. When I do a mitzvah, that is not about me, that is about me just being a vehicle for Hashem's will. And therefore, when I do a mitzvah, that's the way I escape my yeshus, I escape my the shell of my identity, and I become subsumed in Hashem, and thereby I can connect to the Shekhinah. So we must have mitzvahs in order to connect us to Hashem. If we don't have mitzvahs, there is no connection.
So what's the mitzvah anashim melumada? You do a mitzvah, it's become a...
Right, good question, for after class. And this is really something which is connected also to what we had this week in Matan Torah. And Matan Torah is when we were given the mitzvahs. Beforehand we had mitzvahs, but they were optional. And by Matan Torah the mitzvahs became mandatory. And as we know, the word mitzvah is related to the word tzavsa. Tzavsa in Aramaic means a connection. How do we connect to Hashem? Is through a mitzvah. What does a mitzvah mean? What is the literal translation of mitzvah? Is a commandment. When we follow Hashem's commandment, then we connect to Hashem. If there are no commandments, we cannot connect. Us on our own, despite all our spiritual aspirations, and no matter how holy we'd like to be, we cannot connect to Hashem. On Shavuos, we received our lifeline. Hashem gave us 613 connections, and Hashem says, if you do what I say, then you connect to me. So that's why, in order to be able to connect to the Shekhinah, which is on top of, metaphorically on top of our heads, we need to have the oil is the uvda and tavan, the oil is the mitzvahs that we do. Mitzvahs connect us to Hashem. Otherwise we cannot connect because we're trapped in our own yeshus, in our own ego, in our own existence. And yeshus can't connect to Hashem. Only bittul, only nullification can connect to Hashem. But why do we have to have action mitzvahs? So why can't we just learn Torah the whole day? Why is it necessary to put up a mezuzah and to shake a lulav esrog and to put on tefillin? All the mitzvahs that involve physical things. And if you look in the Zohar says uvda tavan. The Zohar doesn't say we connect to Hashem. It doesn't say that the Shem and the oil is mitzvahs. It says mitzvahs could be also spiritual mitzvahs. It says uvda tavan. It has to be actions. Why actions? So the Alter Rebbe explains that if I sit and learn Torah a whole day and I daven, I'm connecting my neshama to Hashem because I'm doing a mitzvah. So therefore, as we said before, mitzvah connects you to Hashem. But you're not connecting your guf, your body, and your nefesh hachayunas, your animal soul, which animates your body, you're not connecting that to Hashem. To connect your guf and your nefesh habahamis, your nefesh hachayunas, to connect your body and the nefesh habahamis, which animates the body to Hashem, for that we need physical mitzvahs. Because when you do a physical mitzvah, that's when you're involving your body, and that's when you're involving your nefesh habahamis. So why do we have to have action mitzvahs? That's the chinuch says that, but the Alter Rebbe has a different understanding. According to the chinuch, that acharei apulos nimshachas alavavos. So the main thing is the kavana, and the actions are only there to bring the kavana. The Alter Rebbe says no. The main thing is the action. Why? Because we need to bring the kedusha into our hands. We need to bring the kedusha into our nefesh habahamis, nefesh hachayunas, which is the nefesh. That is the life force that animates our body. It's in our blood and animates our body, and that's only through action mitzvahs. You're going to ask a question. Why do I need to connect my body to Hashem? Why do I need to connect my nefesh hachayunas to Hashem? What's wrong if I only connect my neshama to Hashem? So my body won't be connected to Hashem. But the deeper me, my neshama, which is in my mind, I'll learn Torah and I'll daven all day and thereby connect my neshama to Hashem. And my body, who cares about my body? Who cares about my nefesh habahamis? So here the Alter Rebbe introduces the whole concept of dira b'tachtonim. That when Hashem created the world, what was his kavana? If Hashem wanted the spiritual, he wouldn't have created this world. He would have sufficed with the spiritual world. He would have sufficed with Gan Eden. He would have sufficed with Malachim, or maybe he would have put us or Neshamas in Gan Eden. Why did Hashem create a world which is so tachton, this lowest world, the physical world? Because Hashem wants to be present in the physical world. In tachton, she'ein tachton, lamata himenu, in the lowest possible sphere, which is our physical world. And that's why we have to do mitzvahs. Why? Because it's not enough for us to connect our neshama to Hashem, but we have to do action mitzvahs because the kavana of Hashem is that we should connect our physical bodies and our nefesh habahamis to Hashem. So that's point number one. Again, this is what I just said encompasses Perek Vav and Perek Lamed Hey, Lamed Vav, and Lamed Zayin of Tanya. So point number one, it's important. It can be important to remember this point because we're going to be revisiting it later. The point number one is that we need action mitzvahs. Why? There's two parts to this point. Part number one is because the only way to connect to Hashem is through a mitzvah. So that's why we need to have mitzvahs and action mitzvahs. Is because Hashem wants us also to connect our bodies and our nefesh habahamis to Hashem. Then the Alter Rebbe continues with the next major point in Tanya, which takes us from chapters 38 through 40, the next three prakim, Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes, and Mem. Says the Alter Rebbe, if the main thing is the Maisa, is to elevate the physical world, to elevate the guf, to elevate the nefesh habahamis, then why is kavana important? Why do we need to have kavana? Just do the mitzvah. Right? The main thing is the action. So why b'chal do we need to have kavana? So here the Alter Rebbe says, and again with the whole beer, a whole long explanation, how the kavana is the wings, the ava and yira that a person has. When a person does a mitzvah, they are the wings that take the mitzvah and lifted up to a higher spiritual reality, meaning that yes, the connection to Hashem is made only through a mitzvah. And you connect to Hashem specifically through an action mitzvah. That's how you connect your body. How do we reveal this connection? Their connection is revealed through the kavanah. That's when we're revealing this connection in a much higher way in this world. That is point number 2. So point number 1 is we need action mitzvahs to elevate our body in the physical world and the nefesh hamis. And point number 2 is that the reason why we need to have kavanah is because the kavanah reveals this connection in the mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah and you don't have any kavanah, so it's not revealed in the mitzvah, the connection to Hashem. But when you have kavanah, when you have avos Hashem, when you have yiras Hashem, when that becomes the neshama of the mitzvah, then the whole neshama becomes suffused with and filled with elikus and with holiness in a very, very revealed way. Okay, and with that, now we can continue on in Perek Nun Gimel, and now we'll understand what the Alter Rebbe is coming to add over here. We're going to start again inside on page 148, and we are starting on the last line of page 148. And this is what the child that's cited in the Zohar says, that the supernal fire, the supernal flame, which is lit above our head, hi shchinta, which is the shchina, it needs oil. Pirush, what does it mean that it needs oil? Lislabish bechachma. That means the shchina comes down in chachma, hanikra shemen mishchas kodesh, chachma, which is called shemen mishchas kodesh. And as we know, it is brought on in Kabbalah that kodesh is a reference to chachma. As it says in Zohar, that shemen is related to chachma. So what did we just learn in the last 3 prakim? We learned that how does the Shekhinah enter this world? The Shekhinah enters this world by entering the Kodesh HaKadoshim. What is the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Is Chachma. Is the Chachma bin Adas. So that's what the Zohar says, that the Shekhinah needs oil. It means in order for the Shekhinah to enter this world, you need to have oil, you need to have the Chachma, it needs to enter Chachma. And the mitzvahs that we do, the action mitzvahs that we do, hein tayag mitzvahs, the action mitzvahs that we do, those are the 613 mitzvahs. Hanim shachos mechachmasa yizbarich. Where do the mitzvahs come from? As we learned, the mitzvahs all come from Hashem's chachma. So when we do mitzvahs, we are at that time, we're able to connect to the Shekhinah. We are a keli, a vessel for the Shekhinah. Why? Because the mitzvahs that we do, where do they come from? They come from Shemen. They come from Chachma, from Hashem's Chachma. So when the Zohar says that the Uvdin Tovan are Shemen, that the mitzvahs that we do are oil, and even though we know that oil normally is a reference to Chachma, that's not a stira, it's not a contradiction. Because the reason why the mitzvahs that we do allow us to connect to the Shekhinah is because where do the mitzvahs come from? The mitzvahs come from Hashem's Chachma, which is Shemen. In order for the oil of the Shekhinah to connect to the psila, to the wick, what is the wick? The wick is the nefesh habahamis, the nefesh hachiyunis, which is in the body, and the kras psila al derech mashal, which is called the wick. Okay, so in order for the body to connect to the Shekhinah, we need to do mitzvahs. Why? Because the body is the wick. You need oil to connect you to the Shekhinah. What is the oil? The oil is the Chachma. The mitzvahs that we do, which come from Hashem's Chachma, they are the oil which allow the wick, which allow the body to connect to Hashem. Because just like when it comes to a physical candle. Ha'ir meir, how does the flame light? Through the destruction and the burning of the wick, which becomes transformed into fire. Kach, the same thing. Oyer HaShechina, the light of the Shechina. Shoira al nefesh halakis. How does it rest on the nefesh halakis? Is aidei kilyoy nefesh habahamis. Is through the destruction of the nefesh habahamis, which is the wick. V'hisabchusa, and its transformation. Mechasheichal l'nohira umemiriru l'miska. Is transformation from darkness to light and from bitterness to sweetness. B'tzadikim, this transformation happens by tzadikim. The tzadikim, they actually transform their animal soul. Or at least ayidei kilyin levusheha, through the destruction of the levushim, the garments of the nefesh habahamis, shein machshava dibur ma'isa, which are thought, speech, and action. V'hisabchusan, and their transformation mechoshech haklipos, from the darkness of klipa, le'oyer Hashem ein sof baruch hu, to the oyer, the infinite light of Hashem, ha'melubesh u'meyuchad b'machshava dibur ma'isa, which is in the machshava dibur ma'isa shetalyag mitzvah Torah of the 613 mitzvahs. That's by Beidinim, because by Beidinim, by people who are not tzaddikim, they don't actually transform their animal soul, they only transform the levushim. And we'll get to that soon, but let's back up a little and what's the Alter Rebbe saying over here. If you were to take a bottle of oil and pour it onto the floor and light it, would it light? You never tried it? It would absolutely light up. It would explode in fire.
Bottle of oil?
Yeah.
Without any wick?
Without any wick. Throw a match into oil, it will explode. Okay? No, don't. Not a good idea. Or the same thing is, if you want to try even better, take a bottle of lighter fluid and pour it on the floor, throw a match into it. But how long is that fire going to last?
Second.
Right, boom, 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 and it's out.
Still don't try it at home.
Sorry?
Still don't try it at home.
Still don't try it at home, yeah. It's like a piece of paper, right? You light it, it'll make a big fire. Don't try it at home. So oil itself, why is that? Because oil, the reason why oil is fuel is because oil is essentially combustible. Oil is easily converted into energy, converted into fire. How do you have a stable? So therefore, it immediately gets dissolved. How do you and burnt up? So how do you make a stable fire? You need a wick. Or if you're making a bigger fire, you need to have wood. Why? Because the wick and the wood resists the fire. And the reason, this is the interesting, the irony of it, the reason why you have a stable fire is because that which is burning is not interested in burning. It's not combustible like oil is. It is a physical matter. And this slow burning, it is the resistance of the wood and the resistance of the wick, which is why it burns very, very slowly, which allows you to have a stable flame. That's the mashal. What is the nimshal of that? The nimshal is that the Alter Rebbe says the wick is our body and our nefesh habahamis. You want the light of the Shechina to rest upon you. You want to connect to Hashem. You want to have a stable flame. You want to have that the light of the Shechina should remain on you in a permanent way. You need to have your wick on fire. Your body and your nefesh habahamis. Because what allows you to connect to Hashem is not your neshama, but the resistance posed by the wick, the resistance posed by your body. When your body is slowly, slowly burnt away and transformed into fire, transformed into Kedusha, and the Alter Rebbe says that can be done in one of two ways. By tzaddikim, they accomplish this through utterly and completely transforming their animal soul into Kedusha. Every one of us has an animal soul. A tzaddik also has an animal soul. Animal soul is, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I want all those egotistical, originally klipa. The tzaddik transforms that all into kedusha. So the tzaddik has taken the resistance and turned it into a wick for Hashem. By the rest of us, by the people who struggle, by the people who have not yet transformed our nefesh alekis, our godly soul into kedusha, our animal soul, into kedusha. But still, there are the garments of the animal soul. What are the garments of the animal soul? The machshava dibur maisa, the thoughts, the speech, and the actions of the animal soul. Everything that we do. When we take that and we transform that into kedusha through doing mitzvahs, that is the wick which keeps us connected to Hashem.
The fuke what? Let's just say not nefesh Bahamas, whatever it is. Just learning. What does that do?
Hold one moment.
Okay.
Here is one of the tremendous chidushim of this perek. I want to go back to what we spoke about earlier today. Earlier today we said that why do you have to have action mitzvahs? The reason why you have to have action mitzvahs is because Hashem wants adira b'tachtoinim. Hashem wants your body connected to Hashem. He wants your nefesh Bahamas connected to Hashem. Because when Hashem created the world, the purpose was He wanted that the lowest possible element should be a home for Him, should be hospitable to Him, should host Him. So therefore, when you sit and you learn Torah and you're connecting your neshama to Hashem, that's amazing. But that's not fulfilling the essential desire of Hashem, who wants a dir b'tachtoinim. He wants a dwelling place in the lowest part, which is the physical, the nefesh Bahamas, your animalistic self, your egotistical self, and your body. That's where Hashem wants to be. So the reason why we have to have action mitzvahs, is because we need to bring the kedusha even lower. It's not enough to connect our neshama to Hashem. We need to bring the kedusha even lower. Here, the Alter Rebbe takes it a step further. And if you look at the words the Alter Rebbe says over here is Kach. The first word in the line is Killian. 6 lines on the top of the page. Oir hashchina sheira al nefesh o alikis. The oir of the Shechina resides on the nefesh o alikis al yidei kilyin nefesh habahamis, to the destruction of the nefesh habahamis v'yisabchusa, and its transformation mechasheichal anahira, from darkness to light. So what's the Alter Rebbe saying over here? This is a huge chiddush. The Alter Rebbe is saying the reason why we have to have actions, the reason why we have to involve the nefesh habahamis, when we have to involve the guf, is not only because if you learn Torah, you're connecting your neshama to Hashem, and it's not enough to connect your neshama to Hashem. You also have to connect your guf to Hashem. No, the Alter Rebbe says your neshama also doesn't connect to Hashem without the wick, unless you transform your body and your nefesh Bahamas. You understand what the Alter Rebbe is adding over here over what we had earlier? Earlier we said the reason why you need your body is you need to involve your body in doing mitzvahs, is because if you don't involve your body in doing the mitzvahs, then only your neshama will connect to Hashem. And Hashem wants also your body to connect because of dir b'tachtoinim. Now the Alter Rebbe is taking it a step further, saying no. If you don't involve your body, your guf and your nefesh Bahamas, your neshama also is not going to connect to Hashem. There is no connection without the psila, without the wick. Without the wick, there is no connection.
Rabbi, are you saying it's possible to bring the animalistic soul up?
I'm saying not only is it possible to bring the animalistic soul up, the possibility of connecting to Hashem, the possibility of having the Oir HaShechina, of having Hashras HaShechina, is only possible when the wick is involved. You can't have a flame without the wick. The neshama cannot connect to Hashem without the body. Earlier we were saying, you learn Torah, you'll connect to neshama to Hashem. But you'll connect your neshama, but that's not enough, because since Hashem wants a dir b'tachtoinim, you also need to do action mitzvahs. So what would be, if we didn't do action mitzvahs, only our spiritual neshama would be connected to Hashem, and our guf and nefesh Bahamas would not be connected. Now the Alter Rebbe is saying that if you look closer at the mashal, you'll realize that no, for the Oir HaShechina to be connected, we must involve our body. Why? Because for the Shekhinah to be present, there has to be resistance. The only way to bring Hashem down here into this world and to connect to the Shekhinah is when we take darkness, when we take that which is dark and that which is bitter, that which is choshech and that which is meriru, and we convert the darkness into light, and we convert the bitter into sweet. Tzaddikim again do that by transforming the essence of the Nefesh HaBahamis and their selfish desires, they transform them into Kedusha desires, and by us, we do it by taking our thought, speech, and action, and instead of using them for things which is what our naturally we'd use them for, which is our physical desires, instead using them for Kedusha.
So what does Torah do? What does learning Torah do?
We'll get there.
Oh, not yet.
We'll get there.
Can't wait.
Why is it that we need to have that resistance? Why is it that we need to have that? Let's look right there inside. Last 5 lines. Because when we transform our Nefesh HaBahamis, which comes from Klipas Noiga, and when we transform it, our Nefesh HaBahamis is Klipa. It's something which conceals Hashem. And when we transform it from darkness to light, v'chulu, nasa b'chines hala asman. Man is Rosh Tevis, it's a Kabbalistic term, it means Mayin Nukvin, which means female waters. We are the female, and the water represents pleasure. When we, Hala Asman is the idea, when we awaken our pleasure and our desire for Hashem, that elicits a reciprocal response from above, in Kabbalistical terminology that's called Hamshachas Mad. Mad is Mayin Duchurim, male waters. So when we transform our Nefesh HaBahamis, we are, so to say, we are arousing and awakening Hashem, and this is Lahamshech Oir HaShechina. This allows us to draw down the light of the Shechina, Ki Bechinas Gili Oir Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is the light of the Oir Ein Sof Al Nafshei Halikis, and the Nefesh Halikis Shebameichen, which is in the mind, in the mind, in the intellect Shebereishay. Again, when we do a mitzvah with our Nefesh HaBahamis, that's how we connect our Nefesh Halikis to Hashem. Ubezeh Yuvan Heitev, and with this we'll understand well, Masha Kasu, that which the Pasuk says, Ki Hashem Alikecha Eish Oichlahu. Hashem is a burning fire, a consuming fire. You want to have Hashem? Hashem is only present if He is consuming you. If you're a wick and He's consuming, what is Hashem consuming? The guf and the nefesh HaBahamis, so Commissioner's Bar, but Makam Acher is explained elsewhere. To put it in different words, maybe we spoke about, I don't remember whether we spoke about this mashal once. We ever spoke about the talking birds? In the olden times, you wanted to give a king a present. You wanted to make him happy. So what was a gift that you would give a king? So you bought a parrot. Today, it's no big deal. You go to a store, and you buy a parrot. They're actually pretty expensive. Maybe $1,000, $2,000. You want to get a parrot that talks a lot? No, it's not that expensive. Not a parakeet, a real parrot that talks. Yeah, I think it's expensive.
Yeah, probably.
But you don't have to be a king to afford it. Let's put it that way. You have to maybe save a few dollars, put it in your piggy bank. But everyone here could buy a parrot. But a parrot is essentially a tropical bird. And the olden times, to transform a tropical bird from some sort of tropical area to middle of Africa or whether to middle of Europe, and that it should survive, and that the bird should be smart enough to actually say a few words, it was a very big rarity. But if you want to you want to give the king nachas, you brought the king a bird, and the king they would put the parrot in the throne room. And the king would take intense pleasure, just sit with the parrot, and the parrot would say the 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 words that it knew, and the king was mishta'asheya ba'atzmusay. The king was, his pleasure knew no bounds from this. Now the question becomes, why is the king deriving pleasure from this parrot speaking? Every person in this kingdom can talk much more eloquently and articulately than the parrot. So if the king enjoys speaking, why is he enjoying the parrot? He should enjoy human beings. Human beings speak better than birds. It's number one. And number two, even when the parrot does speak, Does the parrot understand what it's saying? Does it understand the meaning of the words? It doesn't. It's oisgelernt. It just, it was trained, it's following, it's repeating based on the way it was trained. It doesn't understand what it's saying. So this parrot can say 100 words, and then you have human beings that speak tens of thousands of words. The parrot doesn't understand even what it's saying. A human being does. And yet the king gets nachas and pleasure from the parrot and not from the human beings talking. Why is that? No, it's not such a difficult question to answer.
Because the parrot is not regular.
Parrot has no das.
It's the novelty. It's the novelty of it. The tzipor hamdaberes, the bird that speaks, it's a novelty. Human being speaking, unfortunately, it's not a novelty. Not a novelty at all. But when a bird speaks, that's something which is unusual. And nachas comes from something that's unusual. For anyone over here who had kids, you know what I'm talking about. When your kid, the first time your kid says a word or two, and especially the first time when your kid says a sentence, puts a few words together, and you're smiling ear to ear, and you're posting on Facebook, and you're letting everyone know, everyone and their mother and their grandmother and their uncle. Now your older kid is busy learning Gemara Mishnayos, but you're getting more nachas from your 1.5-year-old who said 3 words and barely put them together and doesn't understand what she's saying. You get more nachas than the older kid. Why again? It's about the chidush, it's about the novelty. And the same thing is true with Hashem. What gives Hashem pleasure? What's a novelty to Hashem? The fact that the neshama is serving Hashem, the holy neshama is serving Hashem, that doesn't get Hashem excited. What gets Hashem excited? When a guf, when a nefesh bahamis, when your animalistic self, when your egotistical self, when your natural self, which naturally just wants olam haza and wants pleasure and wants gratification, and when that's transformed to kedusha, that is halas man. When the nefesh bahamis is consumed by the fire, where is Hashem? Ki Hashem elikecha. You want Hashem to be elikecha. You want Hashem to be your Hashem. In other words, be present in your life. You want to have Shechina Shaya Reisha, you want the Shechina on your head. That it has to be Eish Eichla. It's not enough that you're sitting and learning Torah and your neshama is connected to Hashem. Because your neshama isn't connecting to Hashem. For the neshama to connect to Hashem, you need to have the wick. You need to have the resistance. The novelty is because of the resistance. You need to have the wick. And when the kuf is doing a mitzvah, and when you're forcing yourself to do whatever to do physical actions, and the physical body and the nefesh bahamis is engaged in doing a mitzvah, that brings pleasure to Hashem, and that causes the hamshachas hashchina, and the nefesh alikis requires the nefesh bahamis in order to connect to Hashem. Because without the nefesh bahamis, the nefesh alikis is oil without a wick. You can't have there is no sustainable flame when you have oil without a wick. So that is chiddush number 1 over here. Again, with the conclusion of Tanya, the first big chiddush the Alter Rebbe is saying is that don't think that the reason why you have to have action mitzvahs is only because you also need to connect your body and your nefesh bahamis to Hashem for reasons of dir b'tachtonim. No. You need to have your body, you need to have the psila, because without the body, without the psila, there is no connection at all. That's chiddush number 1. And then we have chiddush number 2. As we said, the Alter Rebbe says there are 2 different types of transformation. Tzaddikim accomplish one type of transformation, and strugglers, those who have not yet completely transformed the nefesh bahamis, they affect another sort of transformation. Tzaddikim, the people who are perfect, and they've completely, through their incredible hard work, they've transformed their ego, They no longer have an ego. So their wick is their transformed Nefesh Habahamis. They transform the essence of the Nefesh Habahamis. The desires of the Nefesh Habahamis, the perspectives of the Nefesh Habahamis, that is their wick. They've transformed the essence of the Nefesh Habahamis from bitterness to sweet and from dark to light. And for those who struggle, says the Alter Rebbe, our wick is, we don't transform. Most of us don't transform the essence of our Nefesh Habahamis. We always, our actual Nefesh Habahamis still always desires selfish things, but the actions of the Nefesh Habahamis, the actions and the speech and the thoughts of the Nefesh Habahamis can be transformed. So first of all, the one thing you'll note over here right away, even before we get to the big Kiddush, the one thing you'll note right away is, whether you're a tzaddik, and whether you're a Beinoni, whether you're a perfect person, or whether you're a tzaddik, or whether you're a struggler, whether you could be a person as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest tzaddik, how do you connect to Hashem? It's through your Nefesh Habahamis. Nefesh Habahamis is your wick. No Nefesh Habahamis, then there's no parrot. There's no Nefesh Habahamis, there's no novelty, and you can't connect to Hashem. And this relates something which we've definitely discussed on several occasions, how when Moshe goes up to heaven, and the Malachim want the Torah, and what does Moshe essentially answer them? You can't have the Torah, why?
You have no mitzvah.
No, because you have no
animal soul.
You have no Yetzer Hara, exactly. It's a funny argument to think about it. Because they have no animal soul, that's why they can't get the Torah. We talked about this in the past. To the contrary, you'd think if they have no Yetzer Hara, then they're holier, and they're able to receive the Torah. But we say that now, dafka through the Yetzer Hara, which is now we understand it. What Moshe was talking about Malachim is, if you have no Yetzer Hara, you have no mechanism by which to connect to Hashem. You have no psila, you have no wick, so you can't connect to the Ir Hashchina.
No, so Gufa, so why? So the Torah should be given to Malachim.
Why?
Because by us, Torah, it's really more than mitzvahs.
Right.
Mitzvahs should be Torah, but I'm saying the limud of the Torah really should be given to the...
So Taka they can learn the Torah. But the kavanah of the Torah is to bring Kedusha over here into this world and to connect to Hashem, and the Malachim aren't shaykh to that. That's why Malachim are completely in this battle from what we do, from our Torah, from our mitzvahs, because we reach a madrega of Hashras Hashchina, which Malachim have no connection to, have no shaykhs to. So beforehand, when we talked about, remember the second big point that we spoke about in the beginning of the class. The second big point was, beforehand we said, remember in the beginning of the class when we were recapping what Tanya was saying earlier. So we had 2 points. Point number 1 is, why do we need action mitzvahs? And now we have a much greater depth, a deeper understanding of why we need action mitzvahs than we did before. And the next point, the next question we had was, why do you need to have kavanah? And what was the answer? The answer we said before, the why you need of kavana. Kavana again is the inner dimension. And this goes a little to answer the question you asked. Why do we need limud Torah? Why can't we just have action? Why do you need the deeper dimension? Why do you need the kavana? Why do you need to have understanding of the Torah? Why do you need to have the feelings?
We need resistance.
Sorry?
You said we need resistance.
But the resistance can be my body. Every time I do a mitzvah, I have resistance. Why do you need to have kavana?
That's the physical part of it.
So earlier we said, now Taka, we're going to have a new depth in it. But earlier we said the reason why you have to have kavanah is because the connection is made through the mitzvah, the action mitzvah. And the kavanah is megala, the kavanah reveals a much higher dimension of Hashem's ratzon in the mitzvah. It's the wings, if you remember we spoke about. Without getting into the details of how that works, but basically the connection is made dafka through the mitzvahs, the action mitzvahs, and the kavanah is only megala. It illuminates the mitzvah and it illuminates the connection to Hashem that He created through the action. Now we understand something deeper. In terms of the wick, ground zero of the wick, the very basic wick is doing mitzvahs. Machshava dibar maisa. That is transformation number 1, which allows us to connect to Hashem and allows us to have hashras hashchina. But when I transform my thoughts and my feelings and my desires, which is what a tzaddik does, but we all do that, as we'll discuss soon, we all do that to a certain degree. When I transform all of that, I have a much bigger wick. I have a much bigger wick. Why? Because I've transformed much more of myself. So what is the purpose of Kavana? The purpose of Kavana is that if Hashras Hashchina comes through the transformation of Meriru Lemiska, the transformation of the bitter to the sweet, and of the darkness to the light. So yeah, I could transform the Machshava Dibur Maisa, I could transform the Machshava, my thoughts, my speech and action into Kedusha. But there's a much bigger and deeper thing, and that is when I transform not only the Machshava Dibur Maisa, not only the thought, speech and action, but when I transform the essence of my Nefesh HaBahamis to Kedusha, that creates a much bigger wick, which connects me to Hashem in a much deeper way. And this takes us back to the very beginning of Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe says the very first words of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe starts off Tanya saying, quoting a Braisa from Masechtas Nida, where the Alter Rebbe says, where the Braisa says that before a neshama comes down here to this world, Mashbiya Noisai, the person is made to swear, the neshama is made to swear, Tehi tzaddik va'al tehi rasha. Be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. Those are the first words of Tanya. And to talk about how the first words of Tanya connect to the last words of Tanya. Later on, in Perik Yudalid, the Alter Rebbe asks a question. Tehi tzaddik va'al tehi rasha is a redundancy. Telling a person, be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha, that's like your kid going off to school, and you tell your kid, I want you to get 100 on your test today. Oh, and don't fail. What does that mean? If Tehi tzaddik, if you're supposed to be a tzaddik, if you tell a person to be a tzaddik, obviously they're not going to be a rasha. So what is the meaning of this redundancy of Tehi tzaddik v'al tehi rasha? So Alter Rebbe explains that there's two things. One is al tehi rasha. Al tehi rasha means that you should do the right thing. Don't do something which is evil. Or the way the Alter Rebbe puts it is, be a beinini. Machshava, dibur, maisa, and thought and speech and action, you should do what you're supposed to do and you should be perfect. And that's something which is eminently attainable for every single one of us. Al tehi rasha, we can all be. Because we all have bechira chavshis, we all have free choice. So every single one of us has the ability to decide, I am not going to be a rasha, I am not going to do what's wrong, and I'm going to do the right thing all the time. But Al tehi rasha isn't enough. In addition to Al tehi rasha, you also need Tehi tzaddik. What does it mean Tehi tzaddik? That's the idea of avoida, of working on yourself. What does it mean? What is a tzaddik? The way the Alter Rebbe understands a tzaddik is someone who has transformed their insights. That they have a love for Hashem, a fear for Hashem. Their joy is in Hashem. They have a revulsion and a distaste for material things in this world. So before a neshama comes down into the world, it's given two orders. Order number one is Al tehi rasha. This is something which there's no excuses for. You can't say, I couldn't do it. You have bechira. Don't be a rasha. Don't do something wrong and do which is right. In addition to that, it's told, Tehi tzaddik, you have to try to be a tzaddik. Are you going to end up being a complete tzaddik? Will you be able to completely transform your insides and become someone whose entire perspective and emotions are in tune with Hashem, and you don't care anymore for Elam Haza, and you have only a love for Hashem and a fear for Hashem? Will you ever get to that level? Probably not. But you have to do what you have to do. The words Alter Rebbe says, you have to do. He says, Afal pikein hu yaseh shaloi. You have to do your job, l'kayim hashvua, to fulfill the oath shemashbim which they administer to eat tzaddik, to be a tzaddik. Vashem yaseh atayv be'einav. Hashem will do as is good in His eyes. But these are two avodas that every single one of us has. the avodah val tirasha, which is machshava dibur maisa, doing the right thing in machshava dibur maisa, and not doing the wrong thing. And then there is tehit tzaddik, which means working on the inside. So again, the first words of Tanya, tehit tzaddik val tirasha. How do we end Tanya? What are the last words of Tanya? The last words of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says, is that the nefesh habahamis is our wick. And through the kilyoin v'ishapkus of the nefesh habahamis, through the fact that the nefesh habahamis is consumed and transformed into fire like a wick, that's how we connect to Hashem. And there are two ways that this is possible, says the Alter Rebbe. Way number one is by Beinanim. Okay, L'fachis by Beinanim, the minimal level of connection to Hashem is achieved through machshava dibur maisa, through al tahir rasha, because then we are transforming and consuming the machshava dibur maisa, the thought, speech, and action of the nefesh habahamis to kedusha. And a higher level than that is tehit tzaddik, when you have kavana and when you learn Torah. By the way, but when you say higher level in this, that means in addition. The kavana itself, you always have to have the machshava dibur maisa. But when in addition to the al tahir rasha, when in addition to the machshava dibur maisa, you also have the tehit tzaddik, you've also transformed your nefesh habahamis, the essence of it. And now you have a chayis and a gishmak in kedusha, which is something which to a degree we can all do. And then you're transforming an even deeper part of your nefesh habahamis, and that becomes an even better wick to connect you to Hashem. And with this, Nishlam Chelik Rishon, Be'ezras Hashem Yizbarach V'Yisala, we have finished the first part of Tanya, Be'ezras Hashem. And since we said we connected the first words to Hitzadik Val Tehir Rasha to the end, there's another connection between the end of Tanya and the beginning of Tanya. Which is that in the beginning of Tanya, the very first page, the Alter Rebbe starts off by saying that there are 5 different levels of people. There's 2 levels of tzaddik. There's a tzaddik gomer and tzaddik she'eni gomer, a complete tzaddik and incomplete tzaddik. Then you have 2 levels of rasha, a complete rasha and an incomplete rasha. And then you have the Beinani, who's in the middle. As you know, Tanya is addressed to the Sefer Shal Beinanim. The Tanya is addressed to the people who are in between, or the people who are struggling or striving to successfully struggle in life. Yeah?
Which Sefer is for Rushes?
We spoke about it. Refer back to the class that we gave on the matter. I'll have to find it. This is it. In other words, at the end of the day, if you're a Rasha, you're struggling, this helps you in all your struggles. Now, the difference between these 5 levels of people, there we've seen the 2 levels of tzaddik and 2 levels of Rasha and the Beinani, is not necessarily in their actions or their behaviors. Case in point, by way of example, the top 3 levels, which is the two levels of tzaddik and the Beinani, in machshava dibur maisa are the exact same. There's nothing differentiating them. None of them ever do any averis. Not the complete tzaddik, not the incomplete tzaddik, and even the Beinani. Again, this is explained at length in the earlier Prakim in Tanya. So what differentiates the 5 levels that Alter Rebbe talks about in Tanya? So immediately in the first page, the Alter Rebbe says, you should know that every single yid, whether it's a tzaddik, whether it's a rasha, the Alter Rebbe cites this from the Rebbe Chaim Vital, from the Arizal. The Alter Rebbe says every single yid has 2 different life forces, 2 different nefashis. One is the nefesh alikis, and one is the nefesh habahamis. And the difference between these 5 levels is how are they doing in the struggle between the nefesh alikis and the nefesh habahamis? In the internal struggle. The internal struggle. Tzaddik Gomer has completely vanquished the nefesh habahamis. The Rasha Gomer, the complete Rasha, is someone whose nefesh habahamis has delivered a knockout blow, complete knockout blow to the nefesh alikis. And then you have 3 levels in between. But these are all internal levels. There's a battle. There's a constant battle going on between the nefesh alikis and nefesh habahamis. And this is what life is all about, navigating this battle between the nefesh alikis and the nefesh habahamis. And the entire Tanya is predicated on this idea that there are 2 parts to us. One part of us, one side of us, one complete life force of us is godly. All it wants to do is connect to Hashem. All it wants is holiness and Torah and mitzvahs. And then there's another part of us that's selfish and self-centered. And the whole Tanya is about helping us navigate this struggle. Because again, what level you are on in life depends on where you are in the struggle between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Habahamis. Everything else is a symptom of that. The main thing is, how's your battle coming along? Between your Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Habahamis. And your Machshav Dibur Ma'aseh, those are all symptoms. The way you're going to behave is going to be symptoms of how that battle is coming along. And that's the whole Tanya. The whole Tanya is, Tanya begins with Kikara ve'elecha davar miyoid, that the Alter Rebbe says it's based on the pasuk that says the Torah mitzvahs is practical, it's actionable. Every single one of us can fulfill the whole Torah mitzvah. Says the Alter Rebbe, how? It's very hard. There's huge struggle. Says the Alter Rebbe, I have a sefer here, and I'm going to tell you how to navigate the struggle. In the very last, that was the first Perek. In the first Perek, the Alter Rebbe introduces us to the paradigm of these two nefashos, two different souls. In the last Perek of Tanya, in the last words of Tanya, suddenly we have the deepest insight possible as to why we have two souls. Why did Hashem give us Nefesh Habahamis? And the answer to that is because it is the wick. Alter Rebbe says, in the beginning of Tanya, from Reb Chaim Vital, every single yid, echad tzaddik v'echad rasha, whether you're a tzaddik, whether you're a rasha, you have two souls, a Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Habahamis. Even the tzaddik has a Nefesh Habahamis. Why? Because without it, can't connect to Hashem. Without the Nefesh Habahamis, there is no wick. So, after spending 53 parakim talking about the battle between Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Habahamis, comes along the Alter Rebbe and says, I want you to know, my parting words to you are, that the biggest gift that Hashem gave to you is your Nefesh Habahamis. Because when you transform your Nefesh Habahamis, and when you transform it from darkness to light, it is the psila, it is the wick, which provides a sustainable fire, and allows that through the shemen, through the oil, which is mitzvahs, that you should connect to the fire, which is the Shechina. And without the Nefesh Habahamis, you have no wick, and it cannot have the Shechina Sharia al Resha.
Wow. That's beauty.
Thank you. See you all in Mitzvah Hashem next week as we continue on.